The devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Doc Mark and Chorus, the little mummy, here to bring you another episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping R's where they belong and adding them where they don't. Okay, Chorus, here we are, episode 51. Ready for another 50?
I was born ready. Let's do this.
Deep Death Dive. Today's Deep Death Dive is the Spanish horror film series Tombs of the Blind Dead that ran from 1972 to 1975, directed by Armando de Osorio.
And then this is a deep dive that we couldn't do before.
Yes, Keith Morrison, it is, isn't it? This series of movies was filmed in Portugal, mostly because during this time in Spain, I believe it was illegal to make horror films of this kind. So he had to kind of pack up his stuff and he had it done in Portugal. So I'm sure you're asking yourself, who were the Knights Templar and what were these horror movies made about them? Well, the true story of the Knights Templar were they were devout Christians that were founded in Jerusalem in between 1118 and 1119 after the First Crusade in 1096 to 1099. They acquired treasure and power, and eventually the church was somewhat put off by them and kind of declared them evil and mean people and banned them and had people turn against the Knights Templar. I maybe even at some point deemed them Satanists. Now, the film takes this folklore and decides to say, well, what if the Knights Templar were satanic? And thus begins the nightmare of the blind dead. And why are the dead blind, you ask? Well, because when they were condemned and put to death, according to the fictional movie, the crows, the ravens, picked out their eyes. And therefore, obviously, their hearing is heightened. And when they want to come after you, even though they can't see you, they can hear your heartbeat. That's pretty creepy. So the first film, Tombs of the Blind Dead, in 1972, you don't get too wrapped up in these plots. I mean, the simple plot that moves the story along here is a group of people stumble upon the blind dead in modern-day Portugal. Okay, this group, it's just full of nonsense and the obligatory rape scene and the lesbian scenes. There's really the nonsense that goes on with this group is incidental.
Obligatory rape scene. Gotta love Spanish horror.
It's the nightmarish images of the blind dead that come after them that are so well shot and frightening. And for 1972, the way that the blind dead looked, the makeup and the costumes, truly frightening, and the slow motion. And there's so many great scenes shot in these films, really nightmarish scenes. And the thing to watch out for when you track down these movies is these movies, when they've been marketed and remarketed, have been cut and edited and even had title changes. The success of the Planet of the Apes films in 1968, one marketing company put this out with a reshot ending and a credit scroll and called it Revenge of Planet Ape. Yeah, which has nothing to do with apes or monkeys in this, but they just try to capitalize on that name and anything for a buck, I guess. Sometimes when you're an independent horror film maker, that can prove you can do so much with so little. Sometimes they try to give you even less. In 1973, we get The Return of the Evil Dead, which, no, it's not playing off the Evil Dead series because that hasn't even happened yet. That's not until 1981. I think other times they've altered this title to say Return of the Blind Dead, which would make a lot more sense. In this outing, they're in a rural Portuguese town that's celebrating the festivities of the centennial. where they're terrorized and tortured by the blind dead. This is my least favorite of the series, mostly because it's full of a lot of stock footage from the original film, I'm sure, because again, they probably had less money or were trying to make a quick buck or who knew what was going on. I have this. This is a double feature of Tombs of the Blind Dead and Return of the Evil Dead I have on a DVD that I picked up at some point, probably in the late 1990s. I'm not sure.
Spanish horror just has too much to take in. There's just too much to try to understand. It's exhausting to like it.
You know, and again, I understand these movies aren't for everyone, and the rest of the normal world would just deem them really bad films. And plus, sometimes Spanish horror just, you know, it takes it takes a certain someone maybe to like them. Third film is The Ghost Galleon from 1974. This is my favorite. Two models are sent out to sea on a publicity stunt. What exactly the publicity stunt is and why you ask, your guess is as good as mine. It doesn't really matter. It's all a plot device to get them to come across a galleon in the fog and darkness. And well, this ghost galleon is harboring, you guessed it, the blind dead. The ghost galleon is really like another dimension. And our heroes, have nowhere to run. Again, this is my favorite. It's a very different departure from what we've already seen. I believe it was set out to be something else and then became a Blind Dead movie. But definitely my favorite of the series. And as I said before, for being the early 70s and the low budget, what they did with the effects of The Blind Dead is just truly amazing. But trust me, there are other places where the effects fall really short. And there is a scene where the ghost galleon is on fire, and it's clearly a model, and it almost looks like they're holding a big lighter up behind it to make it look like it's burning. It's truly terrible. Probably the worst scene in the whole film. And the final installment of Diosario's Blind Dead films is Night of the Seagulls from 1975, and probably the worst title of the four. Here the Templars haunt the fishing town where the legend says that they rise every 7 years to look for a sacrifice for 7 nights. Like it's 7 straight nights of sacrifice every 7 years or something to that, for the sacrificial offering to them. Very decent movie. I think the only one offered right now in Blu-ray. Why just the 4th installment is the only one in Blu-ray? Again, your guess is as good as mine. So there you have Armando Diosario's Blind Dead collection. Good luck finding these films. They come and go on streaming sites. They turn up in bargain bin DVDs, sometimes under different names. They just keep like a wave, resurging in popularity from time to time. Takes an acquired taste.
Oh my gosh. Does that suck?
But I hope you enjoy. And this was Deep Death Dive.
So what have you been watching, Doc? I'm sure the people are just dying to know.
Well, Scary Larry had mentioned to me in a text, Baghead, and I really enjoyed it. Really great ghost story of a different kind and being able to communicate with the dead. Really liked it a lot. Thought it was very suspenseful.
Hi, Dark Mark. Hi, Little Karis. It's Grim Kim. No poems tonight. I noticed, Mark, you edited out the last paragraph where I was singing your accolades, and I presume it's from humility, but I just wanted to mention that I appreciate all your artistic talents.
What you talking about, Kimberly?
I am tickled pink to be called part of the Drac Pack. I mean, I can't even tell you how excited I am. And how everything went down with the show. Oh, it was just wonderful. And I have a new idea for something Grim Kim may throw into the arena. I don't want to mention it because I don't want to pressure myself, but I may contribute in another way moving forward. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated everything and get my little blurb in before tomorrow's deadline. And I kind of had a quiet day with a funeral for a 98-year-old. And boy, I'd love to make it to that. I mean, how can you? And she had on a red and purple satin Hawaiian, like, muumuu she wore in her casket. She looked beautiful, and she was such a bright star, and she's just really reminding me about life and how short it may be, and you just have to grasp those moments that sustain you. So, when I got home, I flipped on the TV, and I saw a couple 70s I haven't seen, and they were fun. The second one was Brotherhood of Satan. Cue up evil children. I love it. And of course, there's like this weird, risque, like the parents can't keep their hands off each other on the side of the bank, even though they're at like a children's festival type thing to start the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, this is 70s heaven. I love it. But Ernest Borgnine was in it. Eddie Albert. It listed John Travolta. I missed him. He must have been younger because it was 1975. I mean, he was like 20 maybe, right? So, I dozed a little bit, but at any rate, both movies were fantastic. Let's see, Brotherhood of Satan. And the first one, I think it was called The Devil's Reign. And Tina, I want to know if you've seen either one because you will love them with the 70s vibe. Everything about them is so 70s. You'll love it. I feel a certain way about the monsters from Stranger Things, Tina, in reference to what you were saying 2 episodes ago. And I'd like to hear Mark's spin too. And I'd love a backstory on the monsters because you know what? The monster's really just a misunderstood creature created in the lab too, huh? Like, I mean, I don't know that it knows its driving force, does it? Okay, I'm getting kind of like caught up in my own head. So, I just left a couple recommendations for you. I'm really looking forward to Abigail opening. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Soon, imminent. Looking forward to it. And looking forward to next week's episode. Thank you. Good night.
I would never intentionally cut off your wonderful Grimm fairy tale, Grimm. Don't really know how that happened. I sincerely apologize, though. And, well, all the audience missed was gushing on about me. And we don't need to hear any more of that, do we?
It took 50 episodes, but oh, how the sloppiness has reared its ugly head.
Okay, so The Devil's Reign, the one you mentioned with John Travolta, Mr. Vinnie Barbarino himself in it. And also who you didn't mention was William Shatner. He's one of my favorites. I am not a fan of this movie. I never liked it. I feel sometimes trying to sit through it is painful. But a lot of people love this movie. Yeah, Travolta's in this movie for a hot minute. And like I said, if you blink, you miss it. Years later, after he gained so much popularity, his name and face were splattered all over the video box, however. And an interesting fact, they had to mold William Shatner's face for this film, for that melting scene. And they had the cast for the mask, and they decided to capitalize it, and they made William Shatner Captain Kirk masks. This is somewhere around 1975 or 76, I think. That was the mask that one of John Carpenter's film buddies, while they were making Halloween, went out to pick a mask. He picked a clown mask, and he picked the William Shatner mask. Someone took the mask, made the eyes a little wider, used white shoe polish to paint the face, cut the hair a little bit different, removed the eyebrows, and voila. That is where the Michael Myers mask came from. Don't worry, that's just Brownie, the corpse-sniffing dog. Brotherhood of Satan, however, I love. Great movie. Nothing beats a good old devil-worshipping cult film from the 70s. Love Brotherhood of Satan. And I did say last week how much I do like Stranger Things, and had even said that it's like John Carpenter and Steven Spielberg had a baby and he made a film. As far as the monsters in it, and nice take, Grim Kim, on the monsters being created in a lab, and maybe not knowing their purpose. But then again, when some things are awakened and can realize their potential and realize what they could do, therefore you've got this great monster. I always look at it that way.
And then this is a deep dive that we couldn't do before.
But those monsters owe a lot to John Carpenter and the movie The Thing. Very similar in a lot of ways, and that's probably not a mistake. Thank you, Grim Kim, for representing the Drac Pack as well as you do. And I hope that this contribution you speak of comes to fruition, because I'm very intrigued and can't wait to hear about it. And I hope that it happens.
Hey, Doc, Mark, and Karis, Horror Chat Matt here. Congratulations on an excellent 50th episode. Really enjoyed it. A lot of fun. Growing up, I obviously loved horror, but one of my other childhood favorite things was comic books. So whenever I got the chance to combine the two, I was always a happy camper. And for my money, Marvel Comics had some of the best horror comics. They had titles such as Tomb of Dracula, which also had a spin-off character called Blade, the Vampire Hunter, which had some pretty successful movies about 20 years ago with Wesley Snipes, and the character is making a comeback. Also had Werewolf by Night, and they even had a short-lived Frankenstein series that was pretty good. And one of my favorite things about those three comic series is from time to time they would cross over with one another. So basically like the old school Universal Monsters. More on them later. Another one of my all-time favorite Marvel comic characters, the Incredible Hulk, in my opinion, is considered a horror character. Even the creator Stan Lee has said that he was based off of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that's good enough for me to classify him as a horror character. Over the last couple of years, Marvel has kind of shied away from the horror elements, but they still had some mainstays of Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider. But that's basically been it from Marvel Comics. And Image really picked up the slack with a little small comic you may be familiar with, Doc Mark, called The Walking Dead, which answered the question of what happens after the credits in a zombie movie. And it managed to even spawn a small hit TV series. Unfortunately, Robert Kirkman ended the comic book series years ago, but Image Comics has still been picking up the slack, publishing more and more great horror comics. One of my new favorites is called Dark Ride, which is basically a horror-themed Disney World theme park that has been going on for years and years and has fallen on hard times. And then some customers start disappearing, and the founder's son goes back to try and figure out what's going on and learns the dark history of the park and some of the supernatural deals that his father may have made to make the park successful in the first place. Definitely highly recommend it. Another fun series, not by Image Comics, but by Boom Studios, is called Something is Killing the Children. And basically this one is kind of self-explanatory. Something is killing the children. Adults can't see it, but it's monsters, and only children can see it. And when all hope seems lost, a masked, mysterious monster hunter stranger appears who can see the monsters, and she may be the town's only hope of saving their children. The first couple of volumes of the trade paperbacks were really good. Kind of loses its way with some of the newest stuff, but the early stuff was fantastic. Here's the part I think you may find interesting, Doc Mark. Image Comics has secured the licensing fees to make Universal Monsters series of comic books. The first series was Dracula, which, while beautiful to look at, was basically just a adaptation of Stoker's Dracula. So no real new material there, but it sure was great to look at. And the one I'm really excited for is coming out next month, I believe, It's called Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives, and this will be an all-new original story. And some of the preview pages I've seen really look fantastic. Looks like a fun story. I forgot to mention DC Comics' wonderful series, Swamp Thing, which has been going on for years and years, but truly a masterpiece of horror comics. And want to give Grim Kim a shout out for her excellent Macabre cast poem. That was a lot of fun. If you were interested or ever read any of these old school Marvel Universal Monster titles, Mark. Anyways, keep up the great work and can't wait for episode 51.
Now, I read Marvel and DC comics, but while everybody else was waiting with bated breath and running to newsstands for Iron Man and the Avengers, mine was always things like DC's The Witching Hour. What a fantastic comic that was. And Marvel's Werewolf by Night, which I have tried to put together a full collection of the 43 issues that were released starting in 1977. They don't have to be in perfect condition, and I'm not out to pay a lot of money, and I'm not out to make money. But every time I'm at any kind of horror convention, I flip through the old comics, and I'm trying to get every issue or get the issues that I never had a chance to get when they came out. And yes, I did also read and collect Tomb of Dracula, the Frankenstein one that was out. I think it was Frankenstein Unleashed, and Swamp Thing. Briefly with Swamp Thing. That was sometime during the 1980s when I discovered that, and I know that that's when those issues came out. I was getting the newer issues in a very very adult orientated comic, as far as plot device and the way the dialogue was worded, but loved them all. Believe it or not, I don't find myself very eager for another retelling of the Stoker Dracula novel. I am, however, interested in Creature from the Black Lagoon. He's one of my favorite Universal monster characters. I get mad at the rest of the family when they say he doesn't look scary. He looks like he says gay. He doesn't say gay. He's absolutely frightening, and he's anything but gay. So you're wondering what to watch next. You're wondering what's that classic that you might have missed the first time around that you want to reach back and check out. Watch Vincent Price in The Witchfinder General. Now, it's not the best Vincent Price film I've ever seen, and he plays the Witchfinder General, who they go around and they determine who a witch is during that black period of history. The great thing was that Price was not getting along with the director at the time, and the anger of his character is fairly real. According to every interview I've ever read, the aggressive nature that comes across on screen was how he was feeling during the filming. Until next time, stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, and beware the moon. But most of all, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon.
This is a Macabre Theater production.